2021 Planning Committee to order. And may we have roll call, please? Can you?
Commissioner Hudson?
Here.
Commissioner Kelly?
Here.
Commissioner White?
Here.
Vice Chair Haskew?
Here.
And Chair Mitchoff?
Here.
Okay, all committee members present.
Oh, you don't have my video going yet here. Can you see me? I'm on my iPad. Usually I'm on another thing. So great. Here we go. Oh, for Pete's sake, it's not coming up. Hold on a minute. Download. Oh, there it is. Downloads. Agenda. Okay, how is everybody? Here we go. Can we roll the tape for the meeting, please?
Due to COVID-19, this meeting will be conducted as a Zoom meeting pursuant to the provisions of Assembly Bill 361, which suspends certain requirements of the Brown Act. This meeting is being live streamed on the CCTA website. The chair will call upon members, staff, and other speakers by name. Please speak clearly and state your name before giving comments or remarks. Persons participating via Zoom with their cameras enabled are reminded that their activities are visible to viewers. Members participating by Zoom wishing to speak should physically raise their hand and unmute their mic when called upon. Members should mute their mics when done speaking. Citizens participating by Zoom wishing to speak should use the Raise Hand feature or dial *9 if participating via phone, and the chair or staff will call upon them at the appropriate time. Citizens will have 3 minutes to speak. After 3 minutes, staff will lower their hand and mute their mic. Participants via phone will be called upon by the last 4 digits of their phone number. It is requested that public speakers state their names and organization, but providing such information is voluntary. Written public comments received in accordance with the teleconferencing special notice for public comment guidelines are printed on the meeting agenda. If authors of the written correspondence would like to speak, they should raise their hand and the chair will call upon them at the appropriate time. All written correspondence received after that and during the meeting will be entered into the record. A roll call vote will be taken for all action items. Thank you for participating in a meeting of the Contra Costa Transportation Authority.
Great. And with that, we will move to public comment. Are there any members of the public who wish to address us on any non-agenda items? Jackie, are there any hands raised or emails received?
No emails received, and I do not see any hands raised.
Okay, we will move on to our consent calendar, which is to approve the minutes of our September 1st, 2021 meeting.
Move consent,
Colleagues,
Hudson.
Hudson moved. Second, Kelly. Any further discussion? Any public comment? I'm assuming not. Jackie, roll call, please.
Commissioner Hudson?
Yes.
Commissioner Kelly?
Yes.
Commissioner White?
Yes.
Vice Chair Haskew?
Yes.
Chair Mitchoff?
Yes.
Okay, motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. Moving on to our regular agenda items. Item A, 4A, is approval of the East County Integrated Transit Study, locally preferred alternative. And I understand Matt Kelly is taking this. You're on mute there.
Thank you, Chair Mitchoff. Let's see, let me get my shared screen going here. Hopefully this will work on the first try. Are you seeing a PowerPoint?
Yes, we are. I am. I think everybody else is too.
I'll take your word for it, Chair Mitchoff. Good evening, Chair and committee members. Matt Kelly with CCTA here tonight to present the East County Integrated Transit Study and the locally preferred alternative that we've developed as part of this study and recommending tonight. We plan on bringing our consultant in, Nelson Nygaard, for the board meeting on the 15th. So I can give you, I plan on giving you kind of a summary presentation tonight, and they'll go into a little more depth in-depth of the analysis on the 15th, if that's okay with you.
Please do.
So, okay, and just a little history on this. CCTA back in 2018 saw the, along with you, saw the East County extension to Antioch of BART open up. We saw immediate demand, over subscription, as it were, especially for the parking. That lot filled up right away. So with no other plans at the time for expansion of transit or parking, CCTA and Peter Engel, who's in the room right now, applied for a Caltrans Sustainable Communities Planning Grant to study an extension of transit beyond Antioch to the Brentwood Intermodal Center, which is planned for Brentwood along Highway 4 at the location of the McElmany Trail overcrossing, which is north of Sand Creek Road. So we were we were awarded that grant in 2019 and brought on Nelson Nygaard in early 2020. And then right in time for the pandemic in April 2020, we kicked off the study. So I'll walk you through how we did it, you know, how we remained virtual and all of that sort of stuff. Let me see if I can advance the slides here. And just another additional bit of background that kind of sets the context. We're looking at what travel times were like back in 2019 for someone driving from Antioch versus taking transit, and then someone just down the road, a few miles down the road in Brentwood, driving versus taking transit. So these are looking at trips to both Walnut Creek, downtown Walnut Creek, and 12th Street, kind of city center, Oakland. So from Antioch with the BART station, it took about 46 minutes to drive to downtown Walnut Creek on average, but only 32 minutes on transit because you've got a new BART station right in the middle of town. Going to Oakland, basically a similar travel time savings of about 13, 14 minutes. 39 minutes driving, or sorry, 56 minutes driving versus 39 minutes on the train. So great travel time savings. Most of that travel time savings is really getting over the hill into Central County and down to Walnut Creek. But then you look at Brentwood, took 63 minutes to drive and 66 minutes to take transit to get into Walnut Creek. Even worse to get into Oakland. Well, worse because it's further, but 86 minutes to drive and 90 minutes on transit. So not a lot of people were choosing transit based on that fact there, that there's a time savings to drive from Brentwood, but also there's you know, barriers to parking in Antioch station. We now know, as of yesterday, we have a new parking facility at the Antioch station, funded by CCTA, Measure J dollars. But we know that you know, once things are back to normal, that those 800 spaces will most likely fill up because the demand was already there in 2019 and will come back again. So that just kind of lays the groundwork for why we moved forward with this study. Basically, what we did was the phase one was collecting a lot of that existing data. What is going on in the corridor? What are the needs in the corridor? Phase two was to kind of develop some alternatives to study, develop criteria for which to evaluate, and then phase three was pouring through those alternatives, evaluating them, and coming up with a locally preferred alternative. All three phases had public outreach. All of that outreach was done via an online open house. Working with our consultants, they had an online outreach expert. We used Lindsay and her Convey consultants. Actually, Convey was on the team as well. So we had a lot of partnership there on the outreach, making sure we were directing people from CCTA social media to the online open house and the surveys that were there. So here's just that phase one was collecting all that existing data, looking at what we studied in the past, because BART had done some studies. We've done some express bus studies in the corridor, but not really looking at anything beyond Antioch. And then looking at what the public was interested in. We asked the public, what do you want? What would you like to see? Phase two, we took in that feedback we got from the phase one online open house. One of the first things we did was establish a stakeholder technical advisory committee, as well as a policy advisory committee, or a steering committee. So two committees made up of staff from the cities of Antioch, Brentwood, Oakley, and then BART, Caltrans, and Tri-Delta Transit. So they considered that feedback from the public and kind of helped the team form some alternatives to study. We came up with 6, and then really fine-tune the criteria that we use to analyze the alternatives. Phase 3 was really refining the methodology for how we look at everything, trade-offs, fatal flaws, things like that, and then weighting of all the criteria. And then also taking in the feedback from the public, coming up with a locally preferred alternative, which we will be getting to in just a few minutes. So the overall goals that were set up by the committees and that were part of the grant proposal were to, overall improve the transit experience in East County, to respond to equitable access needs, make sure there's access for as many parts of the population as possible. Of course, to try and reduce VMT, but really to reduce or to improve air quality. We really want to support economic development in East County, and we know that Brentwood has a lot of plans at their station site there at the Brentwood Innovation Center, and also support any future transit investments in the corridor, like the Glideways proposal you've heard about, but also extending transit beyond Brentwood to the south. And then really, communicate to the residents the benefits of transit, like those travel time savings and other, environmental benefits, to encourage them to actually take the transit that might result from this. So we really looked at putting something in the median. That was one of the main things we did as part of Highway 4 was allow for transit in the median. So that was preserved all the way down to Balfour Road. So we wanted to look at options in the median. We wanted to look at zero emissions vehicles. Any new vehicles purchased for this would be zero emission, as opposed to the what's in the corridor now, which is very low emission diesel, multiple units. But the grant specifically called for zero emissions, so all electric. And we looked at conditions in the corridor that may prohibit or that could impede transit. And there are some pinch points under the original 160 over crossing, not the new ramp that CCTA put in. So there's things we need to consider even for getting transit down to Brentwood in the median. And then we wanted to look at fatal flaws. So, are there any constructability issues to get down to Brentwood, as well as any other regulatory or cost issues. So the 6 alternatives that we actually ended up looking at were, basically extending BART from Antioch down to Brentwood to the intermodal station. 2 alternatives, BRT, basically exclusive lanes, one in the median and one using the HOV or express lanes. And then 2 express bus options. And for both the bus options, we looked at going directly to Antioch and serving the end of the line BART station, And then we also looked at going directly to Pittsburgh Bay Point to eliminate a transfer, so folks wouldn't have to transfer to BART at Antioch and then transfer, the eBART to BART transfer east of Pittsburgh Bay Point. And then we looked at a variation on a rapid bus alternative using arterials between Brentwood and Antioch, and we looked at a Hillcrest alignment and a Slatton Ranch Road alignment that assumed that Slatton Ranch Road was constructed between its terminus north of Lone Tree Road and the Antioch Station site. The criteria we developed looked at, the typical things you'd look at, like travel time savings, ridership potential, cost, but also, looking at number of transfers, like I just mentioned, access to the service, and compatibility with local and regional planning, like those plans that Brentwood has going on to the south. We also looked at flexible service. Could the service go outside of the median and serve other areas like the Brentwood Park and Ride or the Oakley Park and Ride, things like that. And then whether it would preclude future rail extension, presumably to the south in the Tracy direction. And then how long would it take to implement? What's the cost? And then what does the community think? We're going to get more into what the community supported in the authority presentation, but I'll just mention the community had broad support for any sort of transit extension, but they particularly preferred the BART and the express bus alternatives. But those, as you can see my screen, are the ones that really rose to the top. Was the BART rail extension to Brentwood, and then the express bus service to Antioch. And they performed the best both in travel time savings, and then the express bus did better than the freeway BRT to Antioch in that there isn't a lot of congestion in that area. So being in the median versus being in the regular travel lanes didn't affect travel times. And then being in the median made it a lot more expensive of an option because you had to provide either kind of a tunnel or an overpass to get out of the median into the Antioch station. So those were all things we looked at, but really those two rose to the top. So then we had to kind of talk to the steering committee and the TAC and Transplan about some of the trade-offs for moving one of these forward, because one of the next task is to do some preliminary design, conceptual design on whatever we propose to move forward. Something else we considered was MTC and BART's rail expansion guidelines. MTC has their resolution 3434, which limits the transit extensions that can be funded by regional dollars to locations that have a minimum level of density. So I'm going to go to the next slide here. And yeah, this slide gets to that. So one of the drawbacks of the BART alternative was that the Brentwood site does not meet that minimum station area density. We talked to the city of Brentwood about this. They're aware of it. They're certainly going to do what they can to get to that level of density, but they know it's not there now in their plans for the Innovation Center. So they understand that trade-off, as well as you all understand the implementation timeline and cost. It's at least a $250 million service and would take a long time. We don't know when that can be funded. It's just kind of a vision project, but something that we know is very desirable in East County. Its positives are the travel time, future extension, and the vast number of riders that it could carry. So the express bus alternative is low cost. It's about $7 to $8 million right now, and that's really just purchasing new vehicles that could serve it that are zero emission. We would propose looking at some low cost improvements at both station ends that would, basically be amenities, and some design at the station ends where they interact with the riders. So the drawbacks are lower ridership, but still good ridership. We're talking about 800 riders a day for a one-stop service, which is, what many light rail stations in places like Sacramento and San Jose would serve. Actually, it's even more than a lot of San Jose light rail stations. So just the ridership is the drawback, but it really kind of sets the stage for a future BART extension. It establishes the ridership, the riding habits, and preserves the right-of-way for a BART extension. And so here at the bottom is our recommendation that came from the steering committee. The TAC went through Transplan a couple of weeks ago and now is coming to you. We are recommending the express bus alternative for near-term implementation as the locally preferred alternative. We would move it forward for conceptual design, but we are also recommending looking at the rail alternative as part of the conceptual design process and looking at those pinch points. So if there's things we can look at now that would kind of clear the way for when there is maybe future funding that comes from somewhere for a BART extension, that we've kind of cleared some of those really not fatal flaws, but issues that really need to be resolved whenever you look at the project. So we think we could do conceptual design on the express bus and some limited conceptual design on the BART alternative. So here's those costs right here, looking at ridership versus cost, and just want to go to our next steps. Like I said, we're taking this to you.
Matt, you're going in and out. I don't know. You may want to turn off your video.
Yeah.
But
I'm
go
gonna
back
stop
to the
sharing.
screen.
Stop my video. Can you hear me?
Can you hear me, Matt? You probably can, but he can't respond.
I can hear you. Can you hear me now?
Well, I think we got the bulk of the report, and the staff is looking.
Can you hear me?
Yeah. Okay, go ahead.
Oh,
Yes.
sorry. Yes, we did make it to the end of the report. Basically, what we're asking is for approval to move forward with a locally preferred alternative into conceptual design. And then that would go into the final report, which would be issued after in February. The grant expires at the end of February.
Okay.
So,
Holland, I'm going to look to you since you sit on Transplan, and if you had any other comments or questions.
Thank you, Supervisor Mitchell. At this time, I do not have any comments or questions.
Okay, how about the rest of the committee? Any comments? Luella, go ahead.
I'm concerned that by doing the least expensive or what pleases the people now, as the Brentwood area grows, that we will have to do just to get people moving, we will have to do the other alternatives. And I understand why people wanted to do what they wanted to do, but I don't want to get caught in short-sightedness because there will be a lot of growth in that area. And I want to be ready for that.
yeah,
I share your concern because I heard Matt say, at some point we're going to have to do alternative one, I would think, but Brentwood, for whatever technical or logistical reasons, isn't where MTC needs them to be for their guidelines. Do we have a thought or a concept of when they will be? I mean, are we talking a year, 3 years, 5 years?
currently, they don't have that area zoned for. It's all about zoning. Right now, Antioch Station is zoned for that level of development, but it hasn't happened yet. So currently, they don't, and there's a specific plan in place for that. So what Brentwood doesn't have is a specific plan that supports the the density.
So how long would that, are they gonna,
The-
I know we're all short-staffed, we all been through that, but wouldn't they want to get that like as one of their highest priorities to move forward in this next year?
So they are moving forward with this innovation center plan, which is mostly developer funded, and right now they're just not proposing the number of housing units that MTC is looking for. So
Really, given Rena and that's a sarcastic remark on my part.
they are proposing a couple thousand units of housing, but it does not meet those MTC requirements, which are about, I think, 4,400 units.
Okay. Well, and I heard you say that the grant to do this expires at the end of February.
Yes.
Okay.
Just to
so-
complete the study, yeah. So we did work with the city, and they were aware of it, but it's.
So Transplant has said it's okay to move forward,
Yes.
and they have a representative from Brentwood on there. So I agree with you, Luella, but anybody
Chair?
else?
Yeah,
Pardon
Madam
me?
Chair?
Sure, go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, I think this is a no-brainer. I mean, I think right now, alternative 4 is the way to go. It gets people used to the idea of transit being extended. We can't do everything at once. And Lord knows, trying to extend BART forever and ever and ever is going to be really, really expensive. So as Matt says, maybe a rail extension could be possible down the line, but let's go for this alternative now. And at least we'll get something in and people will start getting used to riding transit instead of being in their vehicles.
Thank you. Any other, I don't get the same screen, so I
Karen,
can't
I
see
don't know
any
if you
other.
could see me. I've got my
There
hand
you
up.
go. There you go, Dave. Just everybody jump in. Go ahead, Dave.
I would just say ditto. Chris is right. I mean, how many times do we see
Yeah.
this where, oh no, we can do this study, or we've got one at the Air District, Karen, and 20 years from now, when the lawsuit's over, nothing will be done because we didn't do something that could have been done in 3 or 4 years. I mean, I can still remember going to these meetings in the Tri-Delta building for Transplant when we were talking about whether to go E-BART or BART. And I'm telling you right now, Matt, that those numbers you got at 66 minutes is a joke. It might be an hour and 66 minutes. I never made the meeting on time, and I would leave 2 and 3 hours early from San Ramon to get to Pittsburgh or Antioch, wherever that thing is. I mean, get it built,
Yeah.
build it, they will come. That's really what it boils down to.
Okay. Jackie, do we have any public comment?
There's no public comment on this.
All right. May I have a motion to move this recommendation to the full authority?
So moved, Hudson.
I'll second.
Second,
Moved by Hudson, seconded by White. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Hudson,
Yes.
Commissioner Kelly,
yes.
Commissioner White,
Yes.
Vice Chair Haskew,
Yes,
Chair Mitchoff.
Yes.
Okay, motion passes unanimously.
Thank you, Jackie. Moving on to our next item, 4B, approval of the 2021 update of the Contra Costa Congestion Management Program. And Matt has this one too.
Thanks, Chair Mitchoff. Yes, this is another one that does need to go directly to authority, and it will be under a public hearing, adopted under public hearing. So really tonight, I'm just going to let you know that we have a draft final congestion management program, the 2021 update. As I presented to you back in July, I believe, we released the draft for circulation. It was out through October. This update was a very technical update that really just focused on updates from 2019 to 2021. As I've pounded into your heads over the year, this is something that's required by state legislation based on our growth management program back in 1991. So we fulfill most of the requirements of the CMP through our growth management program, and the foresight we had there to establish a way to evaluate the impacts of land use development on the transportation system. So the CMP update, like I said, is really technical, just focusing on documenting changes from 2019 to 2021. What we focus on is monitoring the transportation system, where we monitor the level of service at 65 intersections around the county. And then we have also updated our 7-year capital improvement program, of basically our unconstrained project list of all the projects that our local sponsors are seeking funding for. So that's another component of the CIP that we updated. So we focused on the monitoring and the CIP. And like I said, our recommendation is to adopt the final CMP under the public hearing on December 15th, and then we will forward that on to MTC, which they will be approving also in December. They approve all the CMPs in the Bay Area, of which there are 7. So that's my presentation tonight. I can go into more detail if you'd like, but otherwise
I
be
think we're
making a
fine,
presentation.
unless any of my colleagues, I'll ask colleagues if they have any comments or questions for Matt. Dave, you're not showing up on my screen, so if you do, I need you to
That's
say
because I
something.
want my hand to say I adopt resolution 21-46-G.
And I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. I'd like to see if we have any public comment.
No written public comment.
All righty. Item 4B is moved by Hudson, seconded by Kelly. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Hudson,
Yes.
Commissioner Kelly,
Yes.
Commissioner White,
Yes.
Vice Chair Haskew,
Yes,
Chair Mitchoff.
Yes.
Okay, motion
Thank
passes
you.
unanimously.
Correspondence and communications are in the packet. So I'll leave that to your reading pleasure. Item 6 are commissioner and staff comments. I don't have any comments. Do any of my commissioners have any comments?
Nope.
All right. I see John is on. I don't know if Tim is on. Do we have any executive staff comments? John's shaking his head no.
No executive
There's
comments.
Tim. There's Tim. I'm on my iPad as opposed to my bigger computer, so it only gives me certain pictures. But with that, then we will adjourn to our January 5th, 2022 meeting. And if I don't see you on Zoom before, I'll see you all on the 15th. Have a good evening, everybody. Good night.
bye.
Good night, everyone.